Welcome to Sacred Magic. Violet is on a quest to bring sacredness back into our everyday experiences. Anyone can have an extraordinary life when they are able to tap into their sacred magic within. Violet and her guests will be sharing their divine passions, inspirations, and stories of connecting with their sacred magic. We are so happy you have joined us today. Let's get started with your host, the magical creator of Discover Your Spiritual Gifts, Vialet Rayne.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sacred Magic Podcast. I'm your host, Vialet B Rayne. My guest today is Amber. Amber Soleil is an intuitive educator, psychic reader who helps people reconnect with and trust their inner knowing. Through her courses, readings, and mentorship, she guides others in strengthening their intuition, understanding their energy, and navigating life with deeper clarity and self-trust. A core part of her work is shadow work, supporting clients in compassionately integrating the hidden or suppressed parts of themselves so that their intuition can deepen authentically. Oh, these words. I love these words. I just can't say them. Known for her grounded yet perceptive approach, Amber bridges the mystical and the practical, inviting people into a more aligned and embodied way of living. I love the practical because the students know with me, I take these esoteric, metaphysical kind of understandings and I want to bring them into how we practically utilize them in our daily lives. That's really big for me. So big subjects I bring down to earth so that people can really understand it. That's the scholar in me. So welcome, Amber, to the show. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here and learn more about you too.
So share with our viewers a little bit what brought you down this road to do what you do today, because I feel like our world currently right now, there's lots of people awakening, getting pushed, nudged, shoved in new directions, right? Like many of us get done. So share with us your story, your experience a little bit before we really jump in and get started.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed that as well. I think a lot of people are going through sort of a collective rapid awakening right now, which is really cool, but really turbulent sometimes too. So, what led me down this path was my own awakening about 20 years ago. Uh, I had always known that I was sensitive to energy. I've always been a pretty sensitive person, but wasn't until my awakening that I realized it just how much I didn't know about the other side and up there and everywhere. I think I used to think that it was just like us and ghosts, that was like my thought process. I wasn't raised with a particular religion to follow. I sort of, found my own way to my spiritual beliefs. But I would say that like what's brought me to a place of wanting to guide others and to mentor others in this environment, in this unknown, which can be scary and uncertain and exciting and thrilling and dark at times, was that I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anyone to ask questions to, 20 years ago. There wasn't a massive amount of people online. There wasn't, there weren't all of these amazing YouTube channels to learn about spirituality in a way that was as accessible as it is now. So I found myself going to, Barnes and Noble and different bookstores and kind of meandering through the aisles for a while to try to find something that called to me. And I learned a lot through this process by making mistakes and not knowing what I was doing and having difficult experiences because of that. So I think I, over time sort of became the mentor that I wish that I had had and became a source of like safety and a place where people could be vulnerable and actively work on themselves and work on being better people with spiritual perspectives. That's really important to me, and I didn't have that. So it's possible that this has been an evolution of my own shadow work coming to light and working through that and healing through that. But it's such an honor to be able to help people, and it's an honor to feel trusted in this space to help others. So I think that's the short version of how I got, where I am now.
I love that. I've been thinking the last several weeks about what I offer and what I give. And I'm sure you think about that too. And you made a statement of, I wished I'd had a mentor that could have guided me. Yes, there's books at Barnes and Noble. Yes, there's people online, but to have someone that you have a connection with to really learn. And I was so hungry at one point to find that. And I'm really picky. I hate to say that, but I'm really picky. When I go to somebody's class, and I still take classes today, I find that I'm super critical, and I don't like to be that way, but I really am, because I was a college professor, because I did training in executive environments. The quality of the training and the education is a big deal to me. I mean, I've had some experiences with spiritual teachers that I was like, oh my gosh, really? That's how they're going to do this? Oh, dear goodness, right? Of creating that space and learning. In the last few weeks, I've really sat with, I wished I could have found when I was looking what I have created or what I bring, because I'm constantly asking myself, would this be valuable to me? Would this be interesting to me? Would I want this? And I think if you create from that space, there are lots of other people looking for what you do, and we're all different. Like we talked before the show, people that are attracted to me are going to be different possibly than people attracted to Amber. And that's the amazing part of today, is there's so many people doing this work, finding that one that you resonate with, that you lean into and really lean into and get help. Because we are going through an awakening, and it's hard to understand and it's hard to navigate. And I think having someone to say, hey, I've been there, done that, kind of know what you're going through, let me help you, is really, really important. You talk about shadow work, right? When I say shadow work, people are like, no, not interested. So talk about, what is shadow work? Because I don't think a lot of people understand what shadow work is.
Yeah, I would love to. So, Carl Jung actually was and it's Jung, Jung. He was a psychotherapist that actually sort of pioneered this work publicly. But I think a lot of people have been doing this, for ages before then, especially people that are into spirituality. But shadow work, and I tend to, people come to me, and it'll surface in every session and we'll talk about it. But shadow work is essentially befriending and learning to understand the parts of ourselves that we feel are unlovable. So when we notice a trigger that we have, being able to trace that trigger back down all the way to the root. Essentially, one trigger from our childhood can show up in so many different ways, but all have the same connecting thread. So while some people have a trigger around feeling left out, or they respond to someone, or they're opening up to someone and the person doesn't respond, or different things within this umbrella, it can have a trigger around abandonment, right? So essentially, it's going deeper and tracing that thread all the way to the bottom and saying, oh, that's what this is about. And, people talk about the ego and ego death a lot. And I don't really agree with the concept of ego death. The ego is here to take care of us and protect us as it knows how, in our limited human capacity. And I'm more for ego integration. And so shadow work is a direct way to start integrating our ego. We're not canceling it because we don't want to look at it. We're not ignoring the parts of ourselves that are a little bit darker, that do need some love. It's more about acknowledging and understanding them. So in the work that I do, I think, one of the biggest things in developing our psychic abilities and our intuition and our spirituality is learning how to vibrate at a vibration that's closer to unconditional love. And we can't love things that we don't understand. we can't love things that we're choosing not to look at because we don't want to deal with it, right? So I think, it's not psychology. It has psychological principles, but the main theme is just learning to befriend and love the parts of ourselves that we don't like very much and don't want to pay attention to because they're painful.
I love because me and you are very much aligned. So I had a student in my class because we were talking about ego. Ego can be very loud. It's probably the loudest voice you have in your head. The ego was given to us to keep us safe. Don't touch that hot stove. Don't run out into the middle of the street. Don't repeat patterns that you've gotten hurt from before. The ego is very much a teacher. And I had a student in my class, and one of my mystery school classes, so high end class, had been studying with me for years. And we got on this topic of ego, and she goes, ego death. I got rid of my ego. And I said, I don't believe that. You can believe that if you choose, because I'm never going to tell you what to believe. But I don't believe we can get rid of our ego. I don't believe your ego goes away. The ego is what keeps you safe. And she got very argumentative. I have no ego. And I was like, wow, that is ego.
That is ego, right? Yeah. It says, here I am. It is ego to think that we can eradicate these very important parts of ourselves, right? Just because we don't like them.
And her ego was definitely showing up, right? Our ego is really there to keep us safe, to remind us in the past what's happened and how we weren't accepted for that behavior or how it was looked at socially or whatever it is. So I always tell people our shadows are mirrors. So if you go to the grocery store today and the cashier upsets you, it's not the cashier, it's you. What is it in this experience that is triggering that emotion? What is it in this experience that you don't like about yourself? What is it in this experience that the shadow's trying to teach you something about yourself? Because it has nothing to do with that person. It has nothing to do with the neighbor that drives you crazy. It has nothing to do with the friend that is extreme. It has to do with what's in here about that experience that's getting triggered that you need to understand. So I always say ego is very loud and it has fear around it. So there is a fear concept in it of you may be in danger. So I have a practitioner in my center that she's crazy. She I love it. She goes, when my ego starts talking about something that I'm supposed to be afraid of, I go to the beach, get a book and read it. I'll be okay. I'll be back with you later. And she moves through the fear. She goes, I give the ego something to do. Go
give it a job.
Give it a job. Go read the book. I'll be back with you later. I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Well,
right?
definitely.
There's some truth to that. And your intuition, that inner knowing is quiet, it's soft, it's loving. It comes from a very loving, very gentle space. So if you're paying attention to this loud voice that's talking, that's your ego. And the divine, the inner knowing is never going to tell you something fearful. It's never going to tell you exactly what to do. It's not going to make choices for you. It's going to lovingly guide you to where you need to be. So I've always told people, if you go to someone and they tell you to divorce your husband, they are not speaking from an inner divine knowing. That's the human experience, right?
Right. And we all have our own filters, and our filters happen to be based on our ego. So it's like, what I do want to say about the ego too is what I think is so beautiful about it. Number one, it's a protector, right? It's sometimes it's like a wounded animal that's like lashing out in anticipation for being hurt. But our ego is also what allows us to be here talking to each other right now, saying, I have something that's important to say, right? I have, with you, you're like, I have this podcast. I want to share this. I have my experience. I want to share this. That's our ego too. And so it is a two-sided coin. And when people say have killed their ego, that there's ego death. You're like, no, you don't want to do that, because it's really, really valuable. I describe it a little bit like a groundskeeper, right? Like it's gonna be there. You just need to give it a job, like you said. You just need to give it a job so that you can focus on listening a little bit more to your own intuition. And it is more subtle. Intuition is a lot more subtle.
It's softer. I have people that come to my center all the time and they're like, I'm hearing this voice and it's telling me to do this. And my question is, how loud is it? Well, it's really loud. Probably ego. What is the soft voices saying? What is the soft, loving voices? Because there's fear and there's love always. We make choices based on fear and love.
Right.
The person that goes to the job because they're afraid they're going to lose it is working from fear. The person that goes to the job because they love the job and they can't wait to get up and get there is working from love. Every choice we make is based on love or fear. So anytime you're making a choice, you'll just pause. Am I making this choice from love or fear?
Yeah. I think it's so funny that we have never spoken before, but I do the same thing. Like I say the same things. And that's why I was smiling so big when you were saying that, because that's been like the biggest theme, I would think, for me, probably the past couple of years. I'm like, am I making a decision based on love or fear? And when it's based on fear, it usually ends up being not the best choice for you, right? It's not for your highest good. But like you said, you take a moment and you really think about, like, dissect it and break it down a little bit. What does it look like when it's not fear? Is it a wounded child who, again, doesn't want to be left out or was made to feel small or, something like that. But yeah, I love that. I love being with you on that.
Well, when we step into our spirituality, okay, spirituality requires that we're accountable for our actions, that we're responsible for the things that we do and say. Doesn't mean we're perfect, because none of us are perfect. I'm not perfect. Amber's not perfect, and I don't know Amber, but there's nobody on this planet that's perfect.
No, I'm not perfect.
And because I'm a spiritual leader, my students, my clients sometimes tend to put me on a pedestal. I don't belong on a pedestal. I cry just like everybody else. I get wounded and hurt just like everybody else. I bleed. I do all the things just like everybody else. But I think in spirituality, when we step in and we become accountable, awareness and reflection becomes key. Being aware of what's going on, being aware of our choices, being aware of our responses to things, being aware of the triggers that bring up emotions, right? Really, really passionate emotions or really painful emotions. Where did that come from? Because you talked about getting to the root. Where did that first start? Because if you can spend some time reflecting and really thinking about, where did that first start? Where did that first come from? And you ask yourself that. Spirit's going to guide you to that answer, and it's going to come up, and you're going to have an aha moment. Oh my gosh, I remember where that first came up, because getting to the root of things is critical. You can't bypass life. You can't bypass, right? You have to be in it, working it all the time. It takes work. There's no bypass here.
Yeah. And if you notice, once this is such a cool thing about shadow work, is once you get to a point where you can identify that trigger correctly, you can actually see how it's been dictating some of your choices in your life along the way. So, if abandonment is something that, well, I say abandonment because that's mine. That's one of my big ones. If we look at abandonment, we look at how we are acting in relationships, right? And how, the ego at that point can be a little bit of a puppet master and making decisions for us without us knowing we're being swept down the river of this trigger. But as we really dissect, sitting with our triggers is so incredibly important. As we sit with them, we dissect them, we befriend them, we are kind of a little freer every time we do that, every time we look at each trigger. And like you said, nobody's perfect. I talk a lot about shadow work. I'm still slapped in the face with shadow work 2-3 times a week. We're constantly going to be up against those forces, but the more you learn to recognize them, acknowledge them, honor them honestly in a way, because it is a part of our story, you find more and more peace. Like everything is just a little bit quieter, because what happens with that loud ego voice is it just gets a little softer, more recognizable. You can give it a job, give it a name, say, hey, go sit over there for a minute, right? But that's really the I think the spiritual piece and self-development piece is that, like, day to day, we just live better when we work on these parts of ourselves.
So one of my classes in the mystery school is called Warriors of Light. And the warriors do 9 months of shadow work, 9
Nice.
solid months.
Awesome. Yeah, that's
So
amazing.
one of the things that we talk about is each direction has a shadow. The shadow that's connected to our thoughts, the shadow that's connected to our heart and emotions, the shadow that's connected to fire, our connection to spirit, the shadow that's connected to our health and our ability to manifest. And we give them names. So they have
Okay.
personalities. Yeah. They have things that where they were created, they have energy. And so when they show up, we can call them by name, right? And work with them and dance with them in different ways. So really interesting ways to kind of work through shadows. And we go through wound healing and inner child healing and all of that, because to be a warrior of light, you have to understand your darkness.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And it's hard to look at our shadows sometimes. A lot of people avoid it just because they know how emotionally taxing it's going to be. Like, it's not the easiest process. And it's a pretty noble thing to do for yourself if you can, but I think a lot of people won't give themselves, the time to let things unfold as they're going to unfold. I remember when I was 22, I was smacked in the face with my first huge piece of shadow work. And I'd always been a little reflective, but I didn't really know the depths of my own triggers at, 20, 22, huge ego, but I remember when I was really hit with it for the first time, and I was so angry. I was angry for months about one single trigger that I finally understood, how it had been showing up in my life. And I was angry. I was upset. I think I was honoring the space by like journaling and talking through it, and kind of it was like a tumultuous processing. But that's the thing. You're saying you have this whole period of time, this 9-month period where it's just wide open awareness. And I think what's good for people to know, right, is that it asks a lot of us to do that and be patient with ourselves and to discover things and to be curious, right? Because we'll constantly shut ourselves down. But it's great that you've created a container with that kind of a space for people to explore, knowing like, this is what I'm working on, this is what I'm doing. And they can literally mark it on their calendar and say, I'm doing this for this period of time, which is wonderful.
Well, it's funny because I have students that avoid that class. Like, I don't want that class. And then I have other students that love that class. They love that each time they go through it, more and more layers get peeled, more and more layers get off. I've had students go through that class. You talk about anger. I had one student that figured out that she was controlling, and she did not like that at all. And she was angry, mad for months. Everybody felt the wrath. Her friends, her family, the students in the class, everybody, because she was so angry about that. And, today that's cooled off. She's kind of evolved past that.
Yeah.
But there is anger in, I can't believe that I'm that way, or people think I'm that way. I don't think I'm that way.
Yeah.
How can I be that way? Well, we all have our own things of whatever that is. And when we step in and recognize it, excuse me, it's grass season. So it's my allergy. So I was just at my allergist a few weeks ago, and she goes, your season's coming. And I'm like,
no.
Great. It has shown up. But those triggers kind of help us kind of understand. And for those that are listening that are perfectionists, that's
Yeah.
a shadow.
Oh, absolutely.
That is a
Yeah.
wound that has been
Yeah.
created that pushes
Yeah.
you to be a perfectionist. And most people
Hmm.
are like, no, it's a good thing. No, it
Well,
really
yeah.
isn't.
And it's something that I find comes up in all of my readings, like almost all of my readings, like I said, because just energetically I am into that, right? So like the universe knows like this is a strong suit of yours to identify and sit with someone while they're having these realizations. But one of the ways that I describe I get a lot of metaphors in the intuitive work that I do, and I'm sure you do too. So many people do. But one of the ways that I describe shadow work is if you take a look at your closet that you haven't cleaned for 15 years. It's like full, it's to the brim. There's a bunch of stuff that you don't use. There's a lot of stuff taking up space. Shadow work feels like number one, the resistance to clean that closet. And then number two, once you start taking out all of those pieces and you have a bunch of piles then on the floor, and your urge to tidy up and organize has completely dissipated. And now you're just looking at this mess like, oh my God, what do I do? And then slowly and intentionally, intention being such a huge part of it, intentionally, you take a look at everything and you figure out like, is this for me? Some things are easier to toss away and recognize and say, oh, I don't need that anymore. But some things you have to kind of grapple with yourself with. Maybe it's a memory that you maybe have a memory bin in your closet, right? You have a box of X's and pictures or whatever. You kind of have to work through whether or not you're willing to first of all look at it, and second of all maybe say goodbye with peace and love, right? So then we put back into the closet the things that we want, and it's a long process, and essentially that's working on one trigger. And then in 5 years you might have to work on that trigger again, and then 5 years, 2 years you might have to work on that trigger again. So it's always ongoing, but it's honestly sort of a maintenance at that point because you already understand most of what's going on in there, right?
It is, and it's so
Mm-hmm.
helpful because we do peel back layers and layers every time. I have
Yeah.
people that say a lot, oh, I've done healing work. I'm done with healing. Oh, we're never
Mm-hmm.
done. There's so many layers. We're never done.
Mm-hmm.
And if you feel like you're done, then go heal for your mother, or go heal for your father, or go
Yeah.
heal for your generation or your ancestors or
Yeah.
whatever.
Community. Yeah.
Yeah, you're never done. That's why
Yeah.
we're all here, is to clear up some of the baggage that we've carried through
Yeah.
centuries now.
Yeah.
It's time to let it go.
Mm-hmm. I did have one reading find me once, one client for a reading find me once where I think it just wasn't maybe the best alignment. But shadow work just kept popping up. Spirit, I set an intention for the messages for the highest good to come in. And they were, but it was a lot of shadow work, and she got really upset, um, and said, everyone tells me to do this. I don't know why you're telling me to do this. And I was like, I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm just giving you the information that's coming because it's coming for you. We can talk about something else. So I don't want to make you uncomfortable. And she said that she was done healing and that she had no more self-actualization or realization or anything to come. And when I told this story actually to my 9-year-old daughter at the time, I talk about all sorts of things with her. We were big on emotional intelligence. And when I was telling her the story and how hard it was for me to navigate, she said, you're never done growing. You're never done learning, right? And just as you said, and I'm like, if a 9, 10-year-old can get the concept of that, we should all be able to collectively realize that, like, we're there. If we're done growing, where else is there to go? Let's just keep going up and up and up and up and up.
Right. And I think it takes us thousands and thousands of lifetimes to get where we really want to be. And then we're still learning. If you think
Yeah.
about the divine source, God, whatever you believe in,
Mm-hmm.
that being is still learning. That energy is still learning. They're learning through
Yeah.
us. They're
Mm-hmm.
experiencing through
Mm-hmm.
us. So if they're continually to learn and experience through all of us, then
Mm-hmm.
we never stop. It's all part of the process of evolution and growing and learning. And I'm sure everybody has a neighbor, a friend, a family member that's done the same thing every day for hundreds of,
Yeah.
years and years, never does anything different, never wants to
Mm-hmm.
do anything different. They're kind of stagnant in their life. I used to call them the zombies, kind of stagnant because they're doing the same thing every day. But that's their choice. But for most of us, we came here to expand, to evolve, to grow, to get to the next level. And that's really
Yeah.
what we should be doing. Everyone should be doing, right?
Yeah. And I think it's hard. I think it's hard for people in that position because oftentimes I think like you'd be hard pressed to find one person who hasn't experienced a type of trauma. And I think that trauma really is what makes the ego want to shut down self-growth avenues, right? It goes, I don't want to look at that hurt. I can't revisit that. I will not revisit that. And so there is that lens of compassion too with people who like just refuse to move. Like, yes, it may be agitating if your brother-in-law is a certain way and he's always that way and he doesn't change, or your parents, right? A lot of us have issues like that with our parents or our grown children. But then we think like what, I have such a big sense of curiosity. I think, well, what caused them to shut down that way? What is it that maybe you know made them structure those walls around themselves? So I approach so much of this with just like, I wonder. And I think that, spirit knows that and will kind of give me angles to like look at. And it helps to shift my own perspective. So it takes out the sting when I'm interacting with people who refuse to grow. Do you know what I mean? Like I go, okay, well, I can see that for what it is, and that's okay. That's for them. I know what's for me. I'm going to go do me over here.
Right. I love that.
Mhm.
My husband tells a story of somebody he worked with that in high school had a girlfriend, like at 17, 18, and the girlfriend broke that person's heart. And what happened was that he got into that mold, that stagnant mold. He didn't want to try again. He didn't want to try to love someone again. So he went through his entire life totally alone.
Oh,
So what
oh,
did he miss out on? What did
yeah,
he miss experiencing?
yeah.
The pain was so hard for him that he didn't even
Mhm.
want to think about it. And there
Yeah.
is that reality for some of us. I dated online for about 10, 15 years. And let me tell you, it's
Mhm.
painful. Um,
Yeah.
and I had girlfriends that would do it and they do it like for a month or two and they're like, I don't know how you do this. Like this
Yeah.
hurts. And I'm like, but if you don't move through it, you're never
Yeah.
going to find that person
Right.
there.
Right.
What means more to you, to get stagnant and not move forward and be alone, or to go through these experiences and learn from
Yeah.
these experiences
Yeah.
and hopefully find what you're looking for, because there's two avenues to this, and some people may
Mhm.
choose, no thank you, I'm going to be alone, and that's okay. But some may choose, nope, not going to be alone, I'm going to at least try.
Yeah.
Even if
Yeah.
I get hurt, I know every time I open the door there's a possibility that I'm going to get hurt. And yes,
Yeah.
I build up walls and protection as I do this, because the more times you get hurt, the more you learn of, okay, I
Mhm.
don't open up as quickly. I don't let them in as fast. I really kind of
Mhm.
sit back and see. But there are always ways to kind of move through some of these things. And you're
Yeah.
right. We don't know where people have gotten hurt or wounded that they shut
Mhm.
down, but
Yeah.
there is something that's happened to them to create that. I'm
Yeah.
comfortable and I'm going to stay in this comfort zone as
Right.
long as I can, right?
Right. Well, I'm so big on feel the fear and do it anyway. Like I'm right in there. Like if something's scary to me, I'm like, well, I want to do it a bunch so that it's not scary to me, right? And that's one of the coolest things about shadow work is once you face that thing, it loses some of its power and it loses some of its ability to make you fearful. And yeah, one of the shadows that I've been working on the past maybe year and a half is presenting and doing podcasts and being perceived and being seen. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to do as much as I can to like desensitize myself essentially to it. And that's what it sounds like you did with with the online dating. You were like, well, I'm going to learn what works, what doesn't, what my system likes, what it doesn't. And you do become more discerning. And you zap the fear out. What do you have to lose, right? And that's, yes, you can get hurt, but then you learn something. And then when you open that door again, you may get hurt again, but then you learn something, right? So you carry all these tools to the next thing. And that, I think, is super valuable.
I think it is too. Well, Amber, this has been a wonderful conversation. Share with us some of the things you offer. We'll have your website along the bottom of the video and also in all the descriptions so that you can connect. But share a little bit of some of the things you offer and how people can connect with you.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. So thank you again. I've enjoyed our conversation a lot, and I feel like we could keep talking for days. So the main work that I do in the world is a concomitation of things. So the first thing that I want to say is that I have a blossoming, blooming community on Facebook called Unlock Your Psychic Abilities. We would love to have anyone who's interested. We're all about psychic and self-development, intuitive development, and a lot of reflections, a lot of practices, a lot of abilities to put yourself out there in low stakes environments. So if you're working on developing your abilities, it's a wonderful place to do that. If you're working to learn more about yourself, it's a wonderful place to do that. I host a psychic development circle once to twice monthly, and it's a live event that's virtual. It's about 2 hours long. It's only $10, at least right now. And the group has so much fun. We go through a lesson. We go through some ethics things. We split off into pairs to do practice readings of each other. It's a really, really great place for practice and group mentorship. So that's probably one of the most high value ways to access work with me in a group environment. The other thing that I've been working on a ton over the past year and a half are intuitive development courses. So those are really a great way to, in your own time, explore concepts that you may not be familiar with. And for those who are more familiar with, who consider themselves more like intermediate to expert, I'm a lifelong learner as well. And I feel like it's always good to get other people's spin on things and takes on things. So we have courses for empaths, courses for intuitive development, courses, working on one right now for intuitive parenting that I'm extremely excited about sharing. And then day to day, I do intuitive readings, so psychic mediumship. Sometimes the things that come through, we never know what to expect. Could be pet communication with your living pet, past lives, life direction, life path, shadow work majorly. I'm giving you these totally out of order. And we dip into cosmic energies and past lives too, which is really, really fun. I'm challenged constantly with my own belief system when I have things, pop in that are really interesting for me to research and explore. So I learn just as much from my clients as I think that they get from me. And I do intuitive life coaching. And that one is huge in what I do. And probably one of the reasons that I'm saying it last is because it is a combination of learning to listen to your intuition and being coached on how to approach and look at life with different tweaks. And really, essentially, if you think about life coaching, it's helping someone to experience life and be an active participant in their life at their highest potential. And intuitive life coaching is that, plus we're interweaving listening to your own intuition, and I'm tapped in intuitively while we're having those sessions. So it's kind of like having a third player that, sees into some of the things that we could be elevating and gives tips on that. So I'm sure I'm leaving something out. I'm all over the place, but I would love to connect with anyone who's interested or drawn to me or my style of work.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing today. It has been wonderful. I've had so much fun chatting with you. Those that are listening, make sure you like, comment, and follow us on your favorite channels. We'd love to see you in the future. Thank you for sharing your sacred magic with us today, Amber. And I wish you a sacred and magical week, and I hope to see you very soon.
Thank you so much. Likewise, I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. To find out more about Vialet, head over to discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. You can also send a personal message to Vialet through email, violet@discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. If you love the show, subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Until next time, remember, we are meant to have abundant and joyful lives. We hope to see you soon at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts.